Blizzard dropped a nuke on VOIDWEAVER this Halloween, but was this all just a trick? Or is it really the treat the community has been begging for? Despite some minor changes, we thought it would be time to update our solo shuffle tier list anyway, because the meta has evolved quite a bit in these past few weeks. And we will jump straight into it with an update to our healer rankings. Disc Priest got 3 separate nerfs, but the most impactful was the one to Trinity, which will now reduce cast times of Smite, Penance, Mind Blast, and Void Blast by 10%, down from 30. This single PvP talent was a big reason why VOIDWEAVER worked in 3v3 and solo shuffle, since the cast reduction along with haste allowed them to pump out huge damage and healing during their entropic rift windows with Void Blasts that were very difficult to interrupt. Along with this, VOIDWEAVER's got a nerf to No Escape, while Disc as a whole got a nerf to Divine Procession, which will hurt but are not nearly as impactful as the nerf to Trinity. Prior to these changes, we had Disc on the S tier, but for now, we're going to be moving them down to A+. Chances are VOIDWEAVER will still be very strong in some matchups. If not, Holy Priest is still solid in solo shuffle and has been overshadowed by VOIDWEAVER for the past few weeks. In case you've been paying close attention to tournaments, Holy is actually the preferred spec in competitive 3v3 for most matchups. This doesn't always translate into solo shuffle success, but we're predicting some Disc Priests might jump ship over to Holy this week. The only other healer that is really standing out in solo shuffle right now is Preservation Invoker, who might have been going under the radar. While their sustained damage might be worse than VOIDWEAVER, their burst is exceptional, and this all comes with some of the best HPS in the entire game. Definitely keep your eyes open for this spec as we go into the mid-season. For now, this will be our updated tier list for healers in Season 3. We're forecasting a small dip in VOIDWEAVER representation and possibly more Holy Priests in the coming weeks. And if you're wondering why Blizzard has been seemingly AFK over the past month, it's because they typically pause tuning during tournament season. With the AWC Finals scheduled for November 15th, don't expect to see much tuning for the next 2 weeks. They've also been working on Midnight, obviously, which we now know might be launching on March 9th. That means we have a few months left in the season. And to make sure that another season doesn't slip by, we recently updated all of our class courses for Season 3, giving you everything you'll need to rank up fast. Including videos on how to min-max your rotation, or how to get the perfect opener, we cover everything you need to play just like a gladiator in PvP. We even take concepts like positioning and break them down into step-by-step guides. It's like questing, but instead of experience, you gain rating. We even offer a 14-day no questions asked money-back guarantee for those of you who just want to try us out. So after this video, be sure to click the link below for an exclusive discount to get started. For now, back to the video. Even though there weren't any tuning notes for Melee this week, we still have an update on the meta. One thing that hasn't changed is that Ret Paladin still has an enormous lead when it comes to average rating, stomping everyone else by a huge margin. Despite getting some damage nerfs earlier in the season, this spec continues to do well in solo shuffle, carried by the unmatched strength of its defensive toolkit. With bursty specs like Marks Hunters continuing to be a dominant force, having tons of defensive options to donate to your team is a really big deal in solo shuffle. But if there's one spec that you could argue belongs in the S tier, it's Survival Hunter, which might actually be the best Hunter spec depending on who you ask. Of course, the elephant in the room is that Survival has a bigger learning curve compared to other Melee, but regardless, the amount of damage this spec can deal is absolutely ridiculous. If you're willing to invest your time into Survival, you will be rewarded since it's easily one of the best specs for carrying games. In fact, Big Mex recently completed a 2400 challenge on Survival using full honor gear, no add-ons, and even 0 macros as a Worgen of all things. Now, obviously, he is the best Survival Hunter in the world, but this is proof that the spec can do a lot to win when played extremely well. Another spec we definitely have to mention is Assassination Rogue, who we will remind you actually got a damage buff in the last wave of tuning thanks to a simple bug fix. Initially, we had Assa Rogue listed as a wild card, but we think it's definitely a contender for the S tier as well. We will admit that Assa can be a bit polarizing, and there are some matchups that are incredibly frustrating to play, especially when the enemy team has bleed removals. On the flip side, Assa has an enormous advantage in caster-heavy lobbies where it can completely dictate the pace of the game thanks to those AoE Garrets. The only other spec we're moving up is Arms Warrior from A to A+. This might seem a bit weird, but we've been impressed with the damage Colossus is able to put out, and with nerfs to VOIDWEAVER, any spec with less agency will probably do better in the coming weeks. For now, this is our updated Melee tier list for Season 3. Ret, Survival, and Assa are clearly standing out with a relatively even distribution of specs across every tier. But now let's wrap things up with an update to the ranged meta as we enter into the mid-season. One spec that has seen insane gains over the past few weeks is Fire Mage, who we will be bumping all the way to the S tier. Look, we know that life can be rough for mages in a meta filled with hunters, but right now, Fire has absolutely insane cooldown damage during combustion, mostly because of Arcane Phoenix. If you high roll and proc a good bird, you can absolutely massacre someone's HP bar as a Fire Mage. This does make the spec fairly RNG dependent, but even outside of Phoenix, Fire Mages are able to do incredible damage without ever needing to hard cast. We're also going to be moving Mark's Hunter up to the S tier, even though its average rating is still very low compared to other ranged DPS. Quite frankly, we think this is a learn-to-play issue, since Mark's Hunter damage is still very overtuned even after nerfs. Having the ability to chunk an entire enemy team's health bar by 70% in 1 second is obviously really strong, and although Mark's Hunters can get bullied in some lobbies, their lethality is just so oppressive for some classes to deal with. The only other spec we are bumping to the S tier is Destruction Warlock, who were doing very well in the VOIDWEAVER meta. If Disc continues to be popular, we could see Destro coming out as one of the best overall range specs, as it does well playing with and against VOIDWEAVER. Anyway, these are the final rankings for ranged DPS after the VOIDWEAVER nerfs, where we have more standout specs compared to Melee at least. Hunter is arguably the best overall DPS in the game, with all 3 specs doing extremely well, but definitely don't sleep on those Fire Mages or Destro Warlocks. Also, don't sleep on our rating gain guarantee, which applies to all of our games at skillcap.com. Just be sure to use the exclusive discount link below if you want to sign up. For now, we want to thank you all for watching. See you soon.